again, this is Gary Edwards. Welcome back to my songwriting class. This is week 4, and it's about collaborating with other co-writers. You might find yourself writing in a cave and feeling lonely and wanting to interact with someone else. And so maybe you meet up with another person who might be a lyricist or another person who can compose music, and you'll feel you benefit from adding another person to the songwriting team. So what are the benefits of having a co-writer? Well, you benefit from exposure to another mind. And sometimes having another person around helps jog your mind in a new creative direction and you become more productive. Then also at the end of the songwriting process, it might help to have another person helping to market your songs. The co-writer might help with areas of expertise that you don't have, perhaps in lyric writing or something of that nature. And it also may be that your co-writer will help with the expenses of marketing. I've found that it helps to have a co-writer who has connections to the music business and who knows what they're doing. So that if your partner has had experience getting connected with published musical theaters or making records with big companies, then it'll be to your benefit to work with your co-writer. Now, what are some of the minuses of working with a co-writer? Well, you have to deal with another ego, and that always adds to the complexity of the relationship. You have to be careful to watch out for inflexibility. Some of the lyricists that I've worked with would not allow me to change even one syllable, so that makes it impossible to work with a person like that. Your co-writer may not carry their weight, they may not keep their word, they may not keep their appointments, and be difficult to work with in many ways. I found in my case that I ended up paying all of the costs and my co-writer wasn't contributing, and so I couldn't see the benefit, and so I discontinued working with that particular co-writer. Another problem with co-writers is that they tend to disappear, so you have to keep track of them, and I'll give you tips for how to do that later on. You know, musicians and artists are temperamental people. A lot of them are bipolar, and so you have to work with another temperament and another ego, and this is difficult at times. You have to watch out for con artists. There's a lot of song sharks, a lot of people in the music business out there trying to rip you off. So make sure you have ironclad agreements and contracts to protect yourself and your work. Your co-writer may be one-hit wonders. I worked with one person who wrote one very excellent song with me and the rest were so-so. So we never made it very far. When you're working with co-writers, you may end up doing all the work and feeling like you're carrying the whole burden for the songwriting activities. One time I was writing a song that included a rap chorus, and I just did not have the knack for that type of thing, so I worked with a group, and they helped me get the one verse rap lyrics straightened out. Perhaps you find that you want to write in a contemporary style, and this is becoming difficult, so you connect with another person that is more modern than you are. Or maybe there's just a person out there that writes great lyrics. You can find them, but they're rare. 98% of the lyrics I read online are pure crap. But if you find a good lyricist, yes, you found your weight in gold. Of course, I write my own lyrics at times, but it's always nice to get another person's perception and point of view. The other thing is that if your co-writer isn't working out, you can always agree to keep your own music and the other person can keep their own lyrics, and you can just use your music for a different project and part ways with your co-writers. I've done that a few times. How do you find collaborators? Well, in these days of the internet, it's a lot easier. You can search for them online. You can join Facebook writing groups. I've written many songs with people that I've never met in person, and we've gotten along fine and written several songs together. Now, it helps to like the person that you're working with, but it's not necessary. But I'll explain that later in more detail. There are songwriting forums and news groups, so again, you can do a search on Google and look for collaborators and other songwriters. Also, ASCAP and the Musicians Union have sections on their websites that are related to helping you find another collaborator to work with. Let me give you some examples of some successful collaborations I've had. I met a person named Duke Lenhart at a writers group, and he wrote this poem called Cowboys Ride the Trail, and I set it to music. And then I used that song as one of the songs in a piece of music I wrote called the Coeur d'Alene Suite. Now, there are times when I use the music to the Cowboy Who Rides the Trail, and I still give Duke the credit even though his lyrics are not appearing in that particular project. So when you work with a co-writer, They own 50% of the copyrights, whether you use their lyrics in the specific projects or not, unless you have an agreement to discontinue the relationship in writing. I had a collaborator that I met through an American Online Writers Group, which tells you that that was quite a while ago. And I liked his lyrics to this one song called The Queen of Baton Rouge. Let me play you an example.
Son! She wore a bracelet on her ankle and a flower in her hair. A satin gown with diamonds said, "Come catch me if you dare." A smile to bring a heartache to anyone silk, a skin like milk, and a walk to stop a crowd. Shoulders bare, reddish hair, and her lipstick way too loud. She was pretty as a picture, a dream that might come true. She was a gal from Mississippi, but the queen of Baton Rouge.
Now, to me, the lyrics of The Queen of Baton Rouge are almost perfect because they contain several descriptive adjectives and write about a colorful person who is very interesting. Words stimulate your emotions and your senses, and so I love this song. Howard and I wrote 3 songs together, basically, and none of them were ever as good as The Queen of Baton Rouge, so we don't write together anymore. However, I still love him like a brother. One thing I'll say about Howard, too, is that he did help me with the expenses of making a great demo by the Bob Thompson group that you just heard. I met a young lady named A.J. Kubai, and I just loved her hard rock lyrics, so I used a few of her songs that we wrote together on a CD I produced called Treble Clef. AJ was 26 years old or so at the time, and she was on the internet through AOL, and she was a street person. She had problems in her life and dealing with different issues. So it was a little difficult working with her, and there were times when I lost track of her for a long time. We wrote a song called Streetwise Lady together, which I wanted to use as a sample of a dance song in my catalog.
Streetwise lady, streetwise lady, yeah. She stands on the corner, waiting all alone. She never stops, never hesitates. She doesn't wanna be second rate. She's a streetwise lady. She knows all the moves.
Finally, I got her name, birthday, and social security number, and still I'm able to track her now if I want to through a detective. I have tried to contact her several times over the years, and I do have a check waiting for her for some few of the songs that we wrote together on the CD that people bought. Now, usually I write the melodies and someone else writes the words. Sometimes I write the words and the melody myself. But there was one occasion when I wrote the words and a lady named Betsy Katz in Chicago wrote the melody. It was a song called It's Time for You and Me to Be Alone. And she got a demo made and paid for it of a country blues version. And so I'll play that for you now.
Put the dog and cat out on the back porch and turn the answer machine on for the phone. Go tell the kids to play marbles on the freeway. It's time for you and me to be alone. You tell my mother we've gone to Kansas. I'll call your boss and say you're staying home. Put the don't disturb sign on the front door. It's time for you and me to be alone. We need some time to be alone together. There's always something else we have to do. For now, let's put the world on hold, dear, so I can put a hold on you. So tell your best friend Bud we've left the country. He'll have to drink the six-pack on his own. Close the bedroom door and lock it tightly. It's time for you and me to be alone. We need some time to be alone together. There's always something else we have to do. For now, let's put the world on hold, dear, so I can put a hold on you. So let the games begin, the second honeymoon start. I want you in my arms, like you're in my heart. So tell your best friend Bud we've left the country. He'll have to drink the six-pack on his own. Now close the bedroom door and lock it tightly. It's time for you and me to be alone. It's time for you and me to be alone. It's time to be alone.
I lost track of Betsy years ago, and I think she got angry with me for not featuring one of her songs on our Gary's Country CD. I haven't heard from her in years. I had fun working with one collaborator named Wendell Noble. I heard him with the Platters and the Drifters and the Coasters singing in Las Vegas at the Sahara Inn, and afterwards we talked. We had a good time collaborating. He invited me to his home in Virginia for a week, and we wrote songs together and came up with a deal. And then he came to Idaho for a week and wrote songs at my house, and we had a good time hanging out together. I spent a lot of money on the deal. I gave him half the rights to my songs, and he gave me half the rights to his songs that we used on the CD. The name of the CDs was called Cast Out the Demons, and here I'm going to insert a sample of one of my songs that he now owns 50% of.
Come on, everybody, clap your hands. Come on. Mm-hmm. Come on. Listen here. Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee. He stepped on the shore, and what did he see? A man who wasn't dressed. He was clearly possessed by the demon
that'll make your neck spin. Come on. I hurt so much that you do a back bend. Gets down in your soul and you do a backspin. We know him by name and we call him Legion. Yeah. We know where to run and know where to hide. You better think twice, get God on your side. It's time to buckle up, let me take you on a ride. To cast out the demons, that's the reason why he died. Y'all know,
if
come
you're
on.
bothered by thoughts that make you slave, by lust, by greed, by avarice, broken promise that they made, there's hope for us all, and you still can't stand tall. And cast out the demons in your brain. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. You can hear him screaming. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. You can hear him screaming. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. You can hear him screaming. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. You can hear him screaming. Jesus, cast out the demons. In the name of the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the demons. Jesus, cast out the Lord. Jesus, cast out the demons. You can hear him screaming. Yeah, cast out the demons.
Wendell and I worked well together, but the other people on the songwriting team didn't fulfill their parts of the deal. We gave 2,000 CDs to a distributor, and he kept the CDs and never distributed them. Later we found the CDs on eBay where they were being sold, and we never made a dime off of those 2,000 CDs. We also hired a promoter, and we never got a report from the promoter about the work that he was doing. He was supposed to be getting our songs played on the gospel radio stations in the Baltimore area, and nothing ever came out of it. I ended up selling about $700 worth of CDs to my family and friends out of the venues where I was playing music. I had a good time, and we made a great CD called Cast Out the Demons. I've used some of the instrumental versions of the songs on some of my other videos and movies, so I'm satisfied. It was a learning experience. The strangest collaboration I ever had was with a person who was dead for over 70 years. I had seen a painting about a incident in Spokane, Washington, where a brave Indian warrior named Qual Chan was hung by Colonel Wright of the United States Army in September of 1858, and that basically ended the Pacific Indian Northwest Wars. This painting inspired me to consider writing an opera, which I thought about for almost 40 years. In the end, I started doing research in 2012 and researched the topic for 2.5 years. The main source for my research was a book called Kamayak and the Last Hero of the Yakimas by A.J. Splon, which was published in 1917. A.J. Splon died in 1927, so the book was in the public domain, and even so, I gave him credit as co-writer. The way I wrote the opera was that I took the Google scanned version of the Kamayakan book and narrowed the 700 pages down to 58 pages dealing with Qual Chan. And then I used the resulting words to inspire the lyrics that I used in my opera, which I wrote in 5 months in 2016. So even though the music and the story was in the public domain, I gave Jack Splon credit as a co-writer.
What
say that the most fun I had co-writing was with a person that I met at an art walk. Somebody told me at the art store that there was a musician in there who had played with Stevie Wonder, and he was from Puerto Rico and played the great Latin percussion instruments. I walked around the store for a while and found an interesting looking character who had on gold chains and was flamboyant, and I started talking to him in Spanish, and we hit it off and joked and laughed for about a half an hour, and we made arrangements to meet again for coffee. So throughout 2016, I met with Orlando at least once or twice, sometimes 3 times a week. We would go to open mics and play at jam sessions around Spokane, Washington, and laugh and joke and just had a great time together. I had no desires to write another CD because I had 10 CDs already. Orlando started talking to me about doing a new CD based on Latin percussion, jazz, rock, and inspired by Taino music, which was the Puerto Rican tribe that inhabited Puerto Rico until the Spaniards came. So the process was that Orlando would come to my house 2 or 3 times a week. He would hum melodies that I would write down, and I would write down melodies sometimes before he got there. And we would put our music together so that you couldn't tell when his music started and my music ended. Orlando didn't read or write music, but he communicated very well, and he'd been a music producer at Disney World in Orlando, Florida. And he would explain to me the complicated rhythms like Andino rock and Afro-Caribbean, and eventually it would go through my thick head and I would be able to put it down. And then after we got tired of composing, we would have dinner and sit around and talk and joke, and the whole family loved Orlando. I consider him like a son. worked with what I call partners from hell. Generally, these were persons who wouldn't let you change their lyrics by one syllable, and I had one lady that I worked with who just had no concept of the rules of music, and I would try to explain to her that you couldn't use too many syllables because they wouldn't fit within the rules of music and meter. Eventually, we parted ways with bad feelings. You have to be able to communicate with your songwriting partners. Whether you like them or not, whether you get along or not, you have to be able to communicate with them. I did work with a director one time, and we had totally different personalities. She was rigid. She was a perfectionist. She wanted everything rehearsed 200%. And my attitude is kind of laissez-faire. I says, well, everything's going to work out fine. Don't worry. It'll all come together, and at the end, we'll have a great product. So at the end, we did have a great product, and I filmed the video, which is called Christmas on the Concourse. You can see it at my website, edwardsmusicsite.com. And so just because you have different personalities doesn't mean that you can't work together. In fact, it's good to have somebody that compliments you and questions you, and vice versa. But you have to be flexible and able to communicate. I worked with another director on a musical called The Friendly Enemy, and the problem we had was that he wanted credit for co-writer. Well, I explained to this person that you can't get credit for a co-writer if you didn't write the music or the lyrics, because those are the only products that you can claim a copyright for. Well, it turned out we had a written agreement that this was the case, and so there wasn't much argument about it, but we didn't work together again after that. But we did get a good product. I'm going to talk more about contracts in week 5, but for now, let me talk about collaborators' contracts. I'm going to insert a sample here. Now, the first clause is who are the parties. The second clause is who contributes what towards the music. The third clause may be how you're going to split any revenues, if any. With my experience, it's that if you split even Steven, whether you have 1, 2, 3, 4 collaborators, you're better off. It saves hurt feelings, and it's easier to calculate when it comes time to dividing up the revenue. And like I said earlier, get your partners' names, birth dates, and social security numbers, because very often it happens that over time you lose track of the other person, and if necessary, and if you have this information, you can contact a detective who will have no trouble locating the person. Another thing I would suggest on a collaborator's agreement is that you get a power of attorney to make deals on the spot, that you first make an effort to locate your collaborator, but if that's not possible, you can sign a contract and make a deal for a musical or whatever, a film, to use your music. You don't have to wait until your co-writer shows up eventually. The final tip I would like to offer is that if somebody wants to charge you a fee to co-write songs for you, don't do it. It's a scam. Co-writers work together for the project, and they worry about doing a good product first, and if the money comes, it comes, and then you can split it up per your written agreement. So that's it for this week on collaboration. I'll see you next time when I talk about legal matters.